And welcome back to the C-suite. We are officially looking down the barrel of 2026. Can you believe it?
No, I can't. I still catch myself writing 2025 every day, it seems here. Turns out change management applies to calendars too.
Spoken like someone who's been preparing workplaces for the future long before it was trendy.
Exactly. And while Jess has been future-proofing teams for years, the dental world is finally starting to move faster. 2026 isn't going to be about one giant explosion. It's not going to be the year of the robot dentist,
Thank goodness.
but it is going to be the year of the collision. We are really starting to see a massive crash between patient expectations, staff psychology, and financial realities.
That's a polite way of saying things are getting more expensive and people are getting pickier.
Exactly. So today we're breaking down the biggest trends we see coming down the pipe for 2026. I've got the people side, Kyle has the tech and marketing side.
And Charlie's here to tell us if we can actually afford any of it.
Spoiler alert, you can't afford not to do it. The cost of doing business is changing. If you're running a 2020 playbook in 2026, you're going to get lapped.
All right, well, let's dive in. Jess, kick us off. What do you see happening with the workforce?
Lots, but we're going to talk about three main things. I'm excited. So, okay, if 2024 and 2025 were all about finding bodies, we'll say, 2026 is the year of retention over recruitment.
Music to my ears. Recruitment is expensive.
Yeah, it's incredibly expensive. We all know that. It can be frustrating how expensive it is. But here's the shift. Owners are finally realizing that exit interviews are becoming brutally honest. People are being honest. People aren't leaving for better commutes anymore. They're leaving because of culture and leadership.
Word travels fast, doesn't it?
Yeah, faster than ever. The local dental community is tiny. It really is. If your clinic burns people out, everyone knows it by Tuesday. So the trend moving forward the trend is moving towards stay interviews, which is something I've been trying to incorporate in clinics for a long time. So the whole thing behind stay interviews is don't ask them why they're leaving, ask them why they're staying before they even plan on quitting.
That's a smart financial move. It's cheaper to give a $2 raise than pay a headhunter $5,000.
Exactly. Which brings me to the second big trend, pay transparency and compensation structure.
Love it.
I think I just heard a pin drop on the other side of the microphones here. That really makes owners nervous.
It terrifies them, but it's a good thing. 2026 reality, here it is. Employees talk, like I said before. They see job postings, they know what their peers make. And if you have wage inconsistency, like paying the new hire more than the loyal veteran without a clear reason, you create instant distrust.
I see this on the books all the time. Informal raises. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and suddenly your payroll structure is a mess.
Exactly. So in 2026, owners really need a defensible structure. You don't have to pay the highest wages in town, but you must be able to explain how your pay is calculated. Showing your employees, here's the grid, here's how you move up. You really need to have clarity, and that clarity builds trust.
So what you're both saying is it's really less about the number and more about the fairness.
Yes.
Exactly, Kyle.
Yeah. Yeah,
And it's
exactly.
one of those things, I'll expand here, when I was a manager for multiple offices, we actually implemented a wage matrix, and we had a starting tier and we had a top tier, and we put underneath all the skills and relevant behaviors that we expected at each tier level. This was really, really good for new hires when we were having interviews with them. They could see exactly what they can expect for years to come, exactly where they were going to probably land up upon hire. But then it was also a really easy conversation with your employees, moving your conversation from subjective conversation, where your opinion of that person matters, to an objective conversation where now the conversation is, do you simply meet the criteria for that wage that you're asking for? If yes, congratulations, you got a pay raise. If not, well, then you know exactly what you need to work on to come back and ask the next time on that pay raise.
100%. I'm just gonna, sorry, say real quick, the subjectivity versus objectivity. You have to be objective because subjectivity can land you in a lot of trouble in
It
many
does.
different
I can
respects.
Yep.
imagine that. Yeah.
That
Yeah,
gets into all the culture and toxicity of office
100%.
politics.
Yeah, exactly. All the things
Yeah.
you want to avoid. And you said, Charlie, when you had someone come in and interview, you would have this matrix to show them. Being upfront
Yep.
right away goes a long way, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I typically got a lot of compliments on that. That's great to know that I'm already kind of at the top end of the wage of what I'm asking for. So I know that might be kind of the higher end of what I'll make here in
Yeah.
time. But it was also great for new hires that they knew exactly what was expected of them, and there's a lot of honest conversations that I would have to say, if you can do all the top tier things competently within 4 months, then I'll pay you a top tier wage and you don't have to wait years. It
Mm-hmm.
was just purely about the performance. So
100%. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Big fan of that.
Yes.
Nice.
um, yeah, so that's a huge trend. And, moving on to one of the biggest pain points that I see coming into play in 2026 here is something we'll call the accidental manager.
The best hygienist in the office manager trap, right?
Exactly. Um, People managers need training. They don't just need the title. And this is something that I talk to clinics about regularly, especially ones that are needing an office manager and just want to promote a long term employee. So one thing that I see is that clinics promote clinical excellence, and they also expect management skills from that. That doesn't necessarily work. Leading people is a skill. It's not a reward for tenure. When you have untrained managers, they tend to avoid conflict and they apply rules inconsistently and they burn out. And the
And
rest
then
is burned out too.
yeah, I imagine once everybody else is burnt out, they then quit.
100%. Yeah. So the trend for 2026 is really training your leads. You don't need an MBA to be a manager of a dental clinic, but if you are an owner that wants to promote your lead assistant to manager, they definitely need to know how to have a difficult conversation without just focusing on the emotional aspect of it. So investing in leadership training is really the new retention bonus.
Love it.
Me too.
Okay, so we're keeping the team happy and paid fairly. Kyle, how are we getting patients to pay for all this?
The game is really changing there too. The buzzword, obviously, over the last 12 months and certainly going into 2026 is AI. Um, how you implement AI, how AI is changing everything online. Um, but really, what I want to talk about right now is not exactly how people think of AI, and it's more of how local search and AI search are slamming together hard.
So what does that actually mean for a dentist?
Basically, two things. One, zero-click search environment. We are starting to see drops in organic click-throughs because AI is providing responses right there.
Mm,
But it also means that as a result, Google, Bing, whatever search engine you're using, ChatGPT, Perplexity, they're all starting to get a lot smarter. They're not just looking at, does your website have this? Does your website have that? Do you have a whole bunch of 5-star reviews? They'll actually be looking at the context and the text of your web pages and the text of your reviews to get context.
Context? What do you mean?
So Google's getting smart. Like, it's scary. Google's AI will now be reading through the text of your reviews. So, if you're really trying to rank for something like Invisalign, you need your patients in their reviews to actually use the word Invisalign.
mhm.
Um, you know, Dr. Smith did my Invisalign and it was great. Google's going to read that and understand, oh, Dr. Smith is graded Invisalign.
So the strategy shifts from please give us 5 stars to please mention the treatment you had.
Exactly. You need to start coaching your happy patients how to be very specific. Um, talk about the treatment they had. Talk about the emotions that they had. We feel like we were handled great. Chairside manner was fantastic. Um, I had a root canal done, and I feel fantastic afterwards. Doctor Doctor Smith made me feel at ease throughout the whole process. This is what is going to be the SEO gold for 2026.
And if I can chime in, the cost of that is zero. So I like it.
I knew you would say that, but there is somewhere where you are going to need to spend some money, and that is going to amplify this with a trust first website.
So is this about looking pretty?
No, it's about utility. Uh, you know, Patients are doing way more research before they call. Your website needs to answer their questions before they ask. You need to start thinking about your website as the first impression that any potential patient is going to have of your clinic. Um, Again, Google is getting smarter. Researching its AI search is pulling in the actual language off your website into AI searches. So you need to start talking detailed FAQs, having any sort of pricing structures, if that makes sense for your treatments, um, clearly laid out, clearly understandable. And you need to make sure that your website is fast. There's also a whole bunch of other technical things happening in the background that implement speed and implement how your code is laid out for it to really start showing up in AI searches. But you can't just rely on a free website. You can't just get your receptionist cousin's girlfriend who did a course in high school on how to build a website to build your website. If you want your website and you want to be attracting new patients, your website is probably one of the areas that you should be strongly looking at investing some money in 2026.
The first touch, so important.
So important. So, if your website is slow, not mobile compatible, looks like it was built in 2015 or worse, 1999, the patient's subconsciously going to start thinking, okay, if they're not investing here, where might else they not be investing in stuff? Are they still working with old tools, old technology? All of these things, you know, it might be a huge leap, but it's planting the seed of distrust. And it's very real. All of these little things add up, and your first impression is always the most important. Uh, and that also then leads into the next big trend that I see for 2026, and that's hyper personalization.
Automated text.
It's even smarter than that. It's time to start leveraging technology to move away from things like your generic postcard, it's time for your next checkup, to start thinking about how you can integrate your patient management system to spit out messages saying, hey, it's been 6 months since your last whitening treatment or last hygiene treatment. Here's a tip to help keep your smile bright. Getting right into what they've had done and how they can keep doing that at home.
And to note on that, Kyle, that increases the lifetime value of your patients, right? If you're personal, they're going to stay. They're going to love you. And they're going to talk about you to all their friends. If you're generic, well, there's another dental clinic down the road that will take them in.
And that's a perfect segue into the next main trend for 2026 from a marketing front is you got to stop moving away or you've got to start moving away from generic, stock photos, that sort of stuff, and move towards authentic. If your website doesn't have photos of your actual clinic or your actual team on it, um, people are going to lose interest quickly.
100%. Authenticity is huge. I just thought of this real quick. sometimes you'll go onto a clinic's website and it'll say about us or meet the team, and it'll just be the dentist. But they've got 20 staff that aren't pictured, and I think it's super important to include pictures of the whole team because that's the team. The dentist is definitely a big part of the the team, but every single person that works for that dentist helps that clinic run. So
I
y-
agree. I
that's
agree.
just one way to be authentic.
And the more that you can show the team and kind of almost walk someone through the moment they open the door, who they're going to see during their visit, um, you just it's those small little trust builders, and front desk, office manager, hygienists, assistants. Make it so that when someone walks in, they feel like they already know you and your team around you. Um, yeah, this 2026 is the year that the stock photo officially dies. Patients really want to see you and what happens behind the scenes. A lot of times clinics are very like, oh, well, what do I talk about for my social media? What do I talk about in my marketing? And um you can take your camera on your phone and walk around the clinic. Do a walkthrough of coming in the door. This is what it's going to look like, and it's showing the sterilization, showing your morning huddle, all those sorts of things are their content gold.
For sure. I love that because just from like I saw anxious patients all the time, and sometimes to help those patients just feel that much better, if they know exactly where they're going to sit, what the waiting room looks like, if they know what the front desk looks like, that's it's step-by-step process for them. And then you show the operatories. This is where you're going to be for your hygiene. This is where you're going to be for your filling that you're coming in for. Like from an anxiety patient anxiety standpoint, that goes a long way.
Oh, we could go like down a totally deep rabbit hole around psychology
Yes,
and
that's
um
another
Season
you
two.
episode.
know
Season two
that's
episode.
yeah. It's like,
Yeah,
but just what I will say is, like, we've all got these animal instincts is fundamentally what they are, and the familiar breeds um familiarity and ease. When we're put into an unfamiliar environment, that's when we get nervous. So all of these little things that you can do to put your patients at ease, it's gold.
So, financial guy here. Does this require a videographer? Because I know those people are not cheap.
That's the beauty of this. It doesn't. Um, in the age of AI, the highly polished everything, the more raw it can look, the more genuine it is, the better. Uh, Use your smartphone. Make it feel real. No, you're a dentist, not a cinematographer. If it's yourself or one of your staff members, people respect that you are doing this. People also respect that you're probably going to be nervous on camera because they know they would be. So the more polished you make it, the more it feels like an ad, and nobody wants to be advertised to it or feel like they're being sold. So if it's raw, they'll understand that it's the truth.
Perfect.
okay, so Charlie, Kyle wants us to film content on our phones, which is super cool, and I want us to train our managers. So really, what's the financial verdict for all these things for 2026? Is it realistic?
Yeah, usually I'm the one pumping the brakes on a lot of things. It's kind of me by nature is let's take a second here and take a look at the financials and see if we can afford this. But for 2026, my advice to owners is to stop looking at these things so much as expenses, and start looking at them as investments. Um,
Explain it. Can you dive into that a little more?
yeah, so a lot of times we look at expenses that it just cost me $2,000. Take Jess's manager training, for example. If you go out and pay $2,000 to train your lead and mid on some management skills, you might feel that, well, $2,000 is pretty expensive. But I want you to look at the alternative. The alternative being, what if I don't do this training for this staff member? Will that lead to cultural changes? Will that lead to the staff member failing at their position because they don't have the tools and resources to actually achieve what I'm asking of them? And if you choose not to do that training, maybe you have the negative side of this come to fruition and they cause turmoil in your office. And instead of that $2,000 expense you saw 6 months ago, you might have just lost your best hygienist, and the second hygienist is in your office crying because they don't feel good about their job anymore. And now you're trying to figure out how to save $20,000 in turnover costs and lost revenue because you're canceling days. So when you look at that, that $2,000 was probably actually some pretty smart money.
Kind of a small investment when you look at it that way, right?
Exactly.
So kind of what you're saying is it's essentially risk mitigation then, right?
It is. And on Kyle's point, trust first websites, we're entering into an era where trust is the currency. And that can't be any more true than in medical situations that we're seeing. There's a lot of options out there, especially in the dental world. There's dentists down the street. So if I don't like Dr. Smith here at this office, I'm going to go to Dr. John that's not more than maybe 3 minutes down the road for me. So it's not actually adding any inconvenience to me, but I'm looking for that personalized service. And I'm looking to actually be heard and felt cared for rather than just another body in the chair and revenue for the dentist.
Yeah, you certainly don't want to compete on price in dentistry, or part of this whole podcast is for the independent dentist who is trying to avoid that corporate DSO model. You are doing this because you want that personal relationship. So
You're right, and you can't compete on price. A lot of times, our governing bodies nowadays provide fee guides, right? So they kind of give that fee guide that probably 80 to 90% of the dentists are going to be running on. So if you want to go lower than that, then you're cutting into your margins, right? So it's one of those things that you need to shift the way you deliver your services and the way you care for your patients. We can make changes on budget sides of things to better handle that money. Maybe you spend less on generic blanket mailers because those are expensive and not personal. And you move that money into leadership training or, other courses for your staff, continuing education, to make them feel valuable to the clinic, that you're actually investing money into them, trying to make sure that they stay, that they can use new skills that are to the benefit of you as the dentist.
or
So
content creation tools, even it's
Absolutely.
another
Maybe that
marketing aspect that you can invest a little money and it can go a long way over the lifetime of that asset, that investment.
might seem like
exactly.
a big investment at first, but it's necessary, hey?
It is. And it's one of those things that sometimes the way you spend your money might look good, but it's not actually kind of building the fundamentals in the platform that you need to go farther. So it's, the profitable clinics in 2026 won't be the ones with the most new patients. They will be the ones with the highest retention rate, actually, both of staff and patients. So this is where the margin is actually going to be felt in 2026 and that growth.
Yeah, it's I often in my sales calls will talk about what is there's the cost of the investment on your website or your marketing strategy, but what is the cost of not investing? And it's I'm hearing that it's kind of the exact same on the HR side. If you're not willing to invest in $2,000 in a training course, are you willing? Does that mean you're willing to give up $20,000 in potential revenue when somebody leaves, or just reduced efficiencies? Same thing with a website or whatever. You don't want to invest the money to attract the patients, okay, but how much are you giving up as far as gross revenues? And does that do those numbers make sense for you? 99 times out of 100, it's worth the investment.
It's a good question to pose, right? Like not, okay, this might be what you think your budget is or what you want to spend, but not just focusing on that, but what are you giving up or what are you not getting if you don't spend this, if you don't invest in this? It's yeah. I pose that question too, Kyle. Like it's yeah. And it's amazing the tone shift or the process shift that a client has when I ask them that question and they kind of start to think a little bit more about, okay, it is important for me to invest in my staff because if I invest in them, then they'll probably want to stay here. And then, oh, okay, yeah, then, and then you kind of go down that train.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. It's also one of those things too, from a cheap way of doing some of these things too, is staffing side of things. Talking to your staff and actually just showing them appreciation for something they did. The way that they maybe handled a patient that had a little bit anxiety for the day, or maybe there's a special needs patient that just needed a little extra attention and help along the way. As the owner and the dentist, giving that appreciation to the staff member, say like, hey, I saw the way you handled that patient. That was perfect. I couldn't have done it any better myself. Thank you for that. That is free, by the way. But it also really goes a long way with that staff member, that they feel appreciated within their role within the office, and that they're actually a contributing factor to the office as a whole and not just an employee.
I think we'll probably say that on every topic that we talk about. Thank you goes a long way.
It does. Absolutely.
And yeah, I was going to chime in as well. Even when it comes to asking for reviews, when somebody does send you a review, a simple response of "Thank you for the review." People people always want to feel validated, seen, and heard. So, whether it's an HR issue, whether it's a marketing issue, whether it's a money issue, as Charlie says, a simple thank you doesn't cost you anything. So don't be afraid to share your thoughts and feelings and appreciation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Cool. All of this makes me really kind of feel like our headline for 2026 is that retention is going to be the new growth.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, whether it's keeping your lead assistant happy with a clear pay structure or keeping your patient happy with that personalized text that you talked about, Kyle, I would agree, retention is the new growth.
Yeah, you know, it's using technology not to replace people, but to help you connect better with those people.
And from my seat, document everything. Document your pay grid, document your marketing plan. Don't wing it. 2026 is going to punish the disorganized.
I love it. So, as a thank you to all of our listeners, we've actually put together a little 2026 practice readiness audit.
It's really just a simple checklist. It covers the HR red flags that I mentioned. Do you have a pay grid or pay grid? Are your managers trained? That kind of thing.
And from the marketing side, is your website answering questions? Are your reviews content rich?
It's free. It'll take you 10 minutes, and it might save you a major headache next year. Check the show notes for the link.
Thanks for listening to the Dental C-Suite. 2026 is coming fast. Let's make sure you're ready for the collision.
We'll see everyone next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.